The South China Sea islands consist of over 250 islands, atolls, cays, shoals, reefs, and sandbars in the South China Sea, none of which have indigenous people, few of which have any natural water supply, many of which are naturally underwater at high tide, and many of which are permanently submerged. Geography. The features are grouped into 3 archipelagos, plus the Macclesfield Bank and Scarborough Shoal. Collectively they have a total land surface area of less than 15 square kilometers at low tide. The Spratly Islands, disputed between the People's Republic of China, the Republic of China, and Vietnam, with Malaysia, Brunei, and the Philippines claiming parts of the archipelago. The Paracel Islands, disputed between the People's Republic of China, the Republic of China, and Vietnam, occupied by the PRC. The Pratas Islands, disputed between the People's Republic of China and the Republic of China, occupied by the ROC. The Macclesfield Bank, disputed between the People's Republic of China, the Republic of China, and the Philippines, with no land above sea level. The Scarborough Shoal, disputed between the People's Republic of China, the Philippines, and the Republic of China, with only rocks above sea level. The islands are located on a shallow continental shelf with an average depth of 200 meters. However, in the Spratlys, the seafloor drastically changes its depth, and near the Philippines, the Palawan Trough is more than 5,000 meters deep. Also, there are some parts that are so shallow that navigation becomes difficult and prone to accidents. The seafloor contains Paleozoic and Mesozoic granite and metamorphic rocks. The abysses are caused by the formation of the Himalayas in the Cenozoic. Except one volcanic island, the islands are made of coral reefs of varying ages and formations. Biogeography. These islands listed here compose the South China Sea Islands ecoregion, in the tropical and subtropical moist broadleaf forests biome. Other islands in the South China Sea are not biogeographically included. Resources. There are minerals, natural gas, and oil deposits on the islands and under the nearby seafloor, also an abundance of sea life, such as fish, animals and vegetation, traditionally exploited as food by all the claimant nations for thousands of years, mostly without disputes that could risk war. In the 20th century, since the WW2 settlements failed to resolve ownership of such lesser areas of land, seas and islands, and because of the economic, military, and transportational importance, the control, especially that of the Spratlys, has been in dispute between China and several Southeast Asian countries, such as Vietnam, from the mid-20th century onwards. True occupation and control are shared between the claimants. Names. The South China Sea Islands were discussed from the 4th century BC in the Chinese texts Yezhou, classic of poetry, Zhao Juan, and Guoyu, but only implicitly as part of the Southern Territories or South Sea. During the Qin dynasty, government administrators called the South China Sea Islands the Three Mysterious Groups of Islands. But during the Eastern Han dynasty, the South China Sea was renamed Rising Sea, so the islands were called the Rising Sea Islands. During the Jin dynasty, they were known as the Coral Islands. For the Tang dynasty to the Qing dynasty, various names were used for the islands, but in general Changsha and permutations referred to the Paracel Islands, while Shitang referred to the Spratly Islands. These variations included, for the Paracels, Jiuru Luaozhou, Kaizhou Yang, Changsha, Qianli Changsha, and Qianli Shitang. For the Spratlys, Shitang, Shichuang, Wanlai Shitang, and Wanlai Changsha. During the Qing, the names Qianli Changsha and Wanlai Shitang were in vogue, and Chinese fishermen from Hainan named specific islands from within the groups, although the Qing officially named 15 large islands in 1909. During China's Republican era, the government named the Spratlys Tuansha Kandao and then Nansha Kandao. The parcels were Zisha Kandao. Republican authorities mapped over 291 islands, reefs, and banks in surveys in 1932, 1935, and 1947. The People's Republic of China has retained the Republican-era names for the island groups, supplementing them with a list of 287 names for islands, reefs, banks, and shoals in 1983. From 2011-2012, China's State Oceanic Administration named 1,660 nameless islands and islets under its claimed jurisdiction. In 2012, China announced plans to name a further 1,664 nameless features by August 2013. The naming campaign is intended to consolidate China's sovereignty claim over Sansha, a city which includes islands from the Zisha, Nansha and Zhongsha groups. History. From 1405 to 1433, Zheng He commanded expeditionary voyages to Southeast Asia, South Asia, Western Asia, and East Africa in Ming Dynasty in China. In 1421, Zheng prepared the 6th edition Maokun map, usually referred to by Chinese people as Zheng He's navigation map, which included South China Sea islands. The countries with the most extensive activity in the South China Sea islands are China and Vietnam. In the 19th century, as a part of the occupation of Indochina, France claimed control of the Spratlys until the 1930s, exchanging a few with the British. During World War II, the islands were annexed by Japan. The People's Republic of China, founded in 1949, claimed the islands as part of the province of Canton, and later of the Hainan Special Administrative Region. Claims and control. The Republic of China named 132 of the South China Sea islands in 1932 and 1935. In 1933, the Chinese government lodged an official protest to the French government after its occupation of Taiping Island. After World War II, the ROC government occupied the islands earlier controlled by the Japanese. In 1947, the Ministry of Interior renamed 149 of the islands. Later, in November 1947, the Secretariat of Guangdong government was authorized to publish the map of the South China Sea islands. The Japanese and the French renounced their claims as soon as the respective occupations or colonizations ended. In 1958, the new established People's Republic of China issued a declaration defining its territorial waters within what is known as the Nine Dotted Line, which encompassed the Spratly Islands. North Vietnam's Prime Minister, Pham Van Thong, sent a diplomatic note to Zhou Enlai, stating that the government of the Democratic Republic of Vietnam respects this decision. The diplomatic note was written on the 14th of September and was publicized in Nhan Dan newspaper on the 22nd of September 1958. Regarding this letter, there have been many arguments on its true meaning and the reason why Pham Van Thong decided to send it to Zhou Enlai. In an interview with BBC Vietnam, Dr. Balash Salante provided the following analysis of this issue. The general context of the Chinese declaration was the United Nations Conference on the Law of the Sea held in 1956, and the resulting treaties signed in 1958, such as the Convention on the Territorial Sea in Contiguous Zone. Understandably, the PRC government, though not being a member of the UN, also wanted to have a say in how these issues were dealt with. Hence the Chinese Declaration of September 1958. In these years, as I said before, North Vietnam could hardly afford to alienate China. The Soviet Union did not give any substantial support to Vietnamese reunification, and neither South Vietnamese leader Ngo Dinh Diem nor the U.S. government showed readiness to give consent to the holding of all Vietnamese elections as stipulated by the Geneva Agreements. On the contrary, Diem did his best to suppress the communist movement in the South. This is why Pham Van Dong felt it necessary to take sides with China, whose tough attitude toward the Asian policies of the U.S. offered some hope, and yet he seems to have been cautious enough to make a statement that supported only the principle that China was entitled for 12-mile territorial seas along its territory, but evaded the issue of defining this territory, while the preceding Chinese statement was very specific, enumerating all the islands for which the PRC laid claim. The Drive statement did not say a word about the concrete territories to which this rule was applicable. Still, it is true that in this bilateral territorial dispute between Chinese and Vietnamese interests, the Drive standpoint, more in a diplomatic than a legal sense, was incomparably closer to that of China than to that of South Vietnam. It was also argued that Pham Van Dong, who represented North Vietnam at the time, had no legal right to comment on a territorial part which belonged to the South Vietnam, represented by Ngo Dinh Diem. Therefore, the letter has no legal value and is considered as a diplomatic document to show the support of the government of North Vietnam to the PRC at that time. In China, in 1959, the islands were put under at the administrative level of Ban Shichu. In 1988, the Ban Shichu were switched to the administration of the newly founded Hainan province. The PRC strongly asserted its claims to the islands, but in the late 1990s, under the new security concept, the PRC put its claims less strongly, according to the Kyoto News. In March 2010, PRC officials told U.S. officials that they consider the South China Sea a core interest, on par with Taiwan, Tibet and Xinjiang. In July 2010, the Communist Party-controlled Global Times stated that China will never waive its right to protect its core interest with military means, and a Ministry of Defense spokesman said that China has indisputable sovereignty of the South Sea in China has sufficient historical and legal backing to underpin its claims. In addition to the People's Republic of China and Vietnam, the Republic of China, Malaysia, Brunei and the Philippines also claim and occupy some islands. Taiwan claims all the Spratly Islands, but occupies only one island and one shelf including Taiping Island. Malaysia occupies 3 islands on its continental shelf. The Philippines claim most of the Spratlys and call them the Calayan group of islands, and they form a distinct municipality in the province of Palawan. The Philippines, however, occupy only 8 islands. Brunei claims a relatively small area, including islands on Louisa Reef. Indonesia's claims are not on any island, but on maritime rights. Flora and fauna. There are no known native terrestrial animals. Birds include boobies and seagulls, which are very common on the islands. The feces can build up to a layer from 10 mm to 1 meter annually. There are around 100 to 200 native plant species on the islands. For example, the parasols have 166 native species, but later the Chinese and the Vietnamese introduced 47 more species, including peanut, sweet potato, and various vegetables.